sumo and they will come. Sumo is life.
Sumo.
Sumo is life.
Sumo is life. Sumo.
Build a sumo and they will come.
Sumo. Sumo is life. I've got to build a supermoto bike.
When you're down on your luck, everything sucks and the whole world seems to be really bad. There's only one thing to do to get back your life, and that's to buy a supermoto bike. Get a dirt bike and put on some street tires, buy an exhaust pipe and light the fire. Go do a few wheelies, go right up a staircase, have your buddy look out for the cops. Save up some money so you can post bail, because you're gonna get arrested a lot. You don't need a new life, you don't need a new wife. What you need's a supermoto bike. Yeah. Sumo is life. Sumo is life. Sumo is life. Sumo is life.
Hello, my lovely goons and gals and my hashtag sumo soldiers. I welcome you to today's video. Man, am I excited, and you know why. Look behind me. Yes, Supermoto conversion. Welcome to the official Supermoto conversion of the CRF 450 RL, also known as Seabiscuit, also known as Little Baby Red. Man, does that ever look good? I don't care who you are. That is one good looking bike. Anyway, we're going to talk about this. Now, before I did the video, obviously, by the way, I hope you like the intro. I'm just trying to be creative here. And speaking of creativity, I didn't want to do just a time-lapse video of this or show me just building this. I think you guys have seen those videos before. I wanted to do something different. And I'm basing this off the feedback I got from you on my other Supermoto videos that I've done recently. And during those videos, many of you reached out and asked, what does it take to convert one of your bikes to a Supermoto? How much does it cost? How much time is involved? Should you do that? Should you buy another one? So we're going to talk about first the details of the job. Where to get the tires, what does it actually take to put them on there, and then the parts list. What do you get from the low end and what do you get from the high end if you put extra modifications on there, what you need and what you don't need. So you have a low entry point and then a high point if you have some extra money burning a hole in your pocket. That's never a bad thing. And I'll talk to you about the parts that I have. Then we'll answer that question. Is it better to convert or not to convert? What do? Do you convert or buy one at a dealership? And then I'll give you some of my final thoughts about what I'm going to do with this bike, how I feel about my experience with converting it, and then you can go from there and I'll talk about some of those details. So let's begin by the tires themselves, because that's what you need. You just go buy yourself some Supermoto tires and slap them on your bike, in theory. I got mine from Warp9. I think there's two major manufacturers here that are well known. That's Warp9 and this KCE, which is like a Chinese version you find on eBay and Amazon. I know nothing about KCE. They just seem to pop up in every search that you do. And these are ones that are selling full kits. Now, I know there's a bunch of other ones out there, but for the majority of the searches that you do and the places you go, this, especially Warp9, is where most people end up going. Now, with these kits, you can buy them in any version. You can buy just rims only, rims with braking discs, or rims, braking discs, and the full tires. I would suggest, if you're going to do this, to do it right, just buy the whole entire kit with the tire already on it. It's going to be the best way for most people. These were shipped to me with air in them, fully balanced, everything ready to go, all the spacers that were needed. None was here, just a bracket, which I'll talk about in a second. But they come complete, and then you just follow the instructions and put them on your bike. So on a low end, I would think you could spend as low, depending on the bike that you own, as low as about $1,000 to as much as about $1,700. Also, they give you the option to go with a fixed rear sprocket or a cush drive. A cush drive is something you see on street bikes where you can pull the sprocket out, and it's got rubber mounts on there. You'll have to Google this on your own, but just briefly, they say that street torque and all that stuff could hurt your transmission. I'm not so sure I agree with that on every bike, but that would be the difference. They're usually $100 more. So do your own math there. Bare minimum, you can take just about any motorcycle you have if they sell tires for that, any kind of dual sport bike, 650 or whatever it might be, and you can convert it over. Now, you obviously can put more modifications on the bike, which I have done, and I'll get into that in just a little bit. But let me talk about the procedure to put these on. It's not as easy as just swapping these tires out and maybe swapping back your dirt tires. If you're a dual sporter like myself that wants to still use dual sport, you need to think about this because it's not as easy as just popping them on, popping them off. If you're going to be a dedicated street rider and stick with Supermoto only, that's not such a big deal. First of all, we'll talk about the rear of the bike. It was really tough getting this rim through the brake. You got to finagle this. That can take you anywhere from 5 minutes to 20. And maybe you get so pissed off you stop doing it. For me, I took the rear brake caliper off, but by doing so, I got air in the line and had to bleed the brakes. So I don't think I saved any time with that. It's not as easy as you think. And when you put them on there, it is a tight fit. I actually had to squeeze down the bracket and hold the tire. So I've got like a foot on the tire, squeezing the bracket, holding one here by myself. It's tough. You should have somebody help you before I got it in there. But it's not, again, as easy as I'm going to pop this off and then put back on my other tire. The front I thought would be a little bit easier than that, but it wasn't. You have to, for me, I've seen people do it where first you have to take the caliper, you have to take the bracket off of the caliper and mount the one that they sent you with it so it fits the oversized front rotor. I couldn't get the caliper on the bike. It kept hitting the rim. Like the caliper was too big for the rim. I had to take one of the brake pads off, slide it on, and put it back on, then stick the pin there. I saw some people on there pop them out and slide it on. I had no success with that, guys. Maybe it was late at night. I was working really hard on this thing. Maybe I just kind of lost my patience a little bit, whatever it was. But for me, I had to pop the pin out. And I actually forgot to put something on the front tire, and I had to take the whole thing back off. So I had to unscrew that, pop out the brake, put it back down, slide it in there. I'm like, wow, this is a pain in the ass. So if you're, again, as a dual sporter, if you're looking at, I'm going to ride this bike, then swap these out. Swapping takes like an hour and a ton of patience. Now, on that note, I want to move back to the rear of the motorcycle. When they send you these tires, it seems that all of them come with a 44-tooth rear sprocket. And if you're going to ride Supermoto and dedicated street, I think that's a great combination. I don't know what other dual sports are like, but if you have a 450 RL, the rear sprocket on this is 51 teeth. That's a big difference between 44 and 51. In fact, it's such a big difference that 44 doesn't fit on this unless you cut some links out of your chain. So I would say if you have a bike with a 48 rear tooth sprocket, you're going to have to cut your chain or buy another chain to fit the smaller rear sprocket. Or if you're a dual sporter like myself, you're going to have to choose what you want, because I don't want to change the sprocket or the chain every single time I want to swap them over. It was already challenging enough to put them on there. So for me, I decided to get another 51 tooth sprocket and put it on the bike. Now, that's not the greatest Supermoto gearing, but I'm not going to race Supermoto. I'm just going to play on tracks and play around. So whatever, I'm just going to have to give it up because I still want to be able to dual sport with a bike, and I don't want to sit here and have to change that sprocket along with the chain every time I swap over. I think you know where I'm going with that. So keep that in mind. If you want to do the swap out thing, you're going to need, I don't think it's a good idea to have a 44 rear tooth sprocket on your dirt bike if you're trail riding or single track. So you're going to have to make a choice. Which one do you go with so you stay with the same type of gearing? One of those areas you're going to give up your quality of the bike, the way it rides, the way it feels, So keep that in mind. You'll have to choose, but that's what you're going to have to do. If you're riding regular street, you're going to make it official Supermoto and keep it that way. Stick with the 44 teeth. But the bottom line is it's not so easy just to swap them out if that's what you're considering. But once you get them on there, they work really, really well and everything is pretty good. Now let's talk about the modifications that I have made to this bike. Because if you own a dual sport and you're buying a dual sport, have one, chances are you've already modified it because they are not so street friendly in these. There's been a lot of documentation, especially the 450 RL. So I've put a few modifications in there, basically some easy stuff like you're going to need some hand guards. You're going to need this anyway if you're riding Supermoto. You're going to drop your bike. You don't want to break your levers. You want some hand protection or something like that. So I've got some of these on there. I've got a bracket that I made for the front so I can put a windscreen on the bike. That's just personal preference. You don't need to do that. I have a Graves exhaust on this right now, full titanium. And I would say something about exhaust pipes. I'm not so sure that they're the best investment a rider can make because the cost of this is like $1,200. That's almost the cost of the wheels. So if I had to choose which one I was going to buy, I would certainly buy the wheels because now I have two versions of a motorcycle versus just 2 more horsepower. Touchy subject. I'm going to do this full review coming up here on this, the FMF and the Yosh for this bike, but just blurbing out some thoughts here. But I got this on here. It's about 1,200 bills for this one. The best single greatest modification that I've made to this bike, and I would suggest this about anything that you are going to buy dual sport, even Supermotos from the factory, is the ECU. I've got an Athena GET ECU in this. I think it added almost 15, I'm not lying, 15 horsepower to this bike. It was the single greatest mod. I paid like $1,000, about $1,100, has traction control on it, multiple map settings. And if you're going to ride, man, just to have that ability to go through different maps, adjust those types of maps, especially if you're going to do any kind of track riding, you can get yourself more torque. If you have a short kart track where you're coming out of tight corners, if it's a wider open and you're like on this classic course in Las Vegas or something, you want to have some wide open spots, then you can adjust the mapping instead of the gearing, which really makes an incredible amount of difference. So I've got about $1,200 into that. Do the math there on it, maybe 3-4K I've gotten to this bike now, plus the tires. But I have actually, in essence, 3 different motorcycles. I can put the windscreen on and have an adventure bike. I can have a dual sport bike with the dirt bike tires. And I have a Supermoto bike, which is a bitchin' Supermoto. I haven't ridden it out because I wanted to do this video. I just kind of rode it up and down the street. I can already tell you it's seriously bitchin'. I didn't want to just spanner it up before the video, though. Runs hella good with that ECU. Now, this brings to this question, do you go that route? Why would you even do something like this? I mean, we obviously know why, because Supermoto is the greatest bike ever built. But one of these reasons is what we talked about in the past video. If you're looking at major manufacturers, worldwide dealer network, major manufacturers, you really only have 3 that are producing a Supermoto. You've got the Kawasaki that makes the KLX 300, the ancient DRZ 400, which is an icon in this space, and the ones that KTM make, the 690, the 701 for Husky, and the Gas. Now, I know there's some obscure ones out there. The SVX, I think it is. Obviously, TM, which makes a killer, sick-looking Supermoto. But these aren't the easiest to get. So if you're somebody that's in the market for the used market, you can find some of the larger dealer bikes, the more widely known bikes. For parts, because you're probably going to crash it or break some things on the bike. Can you get parts if you buy some of them? So mainly, you don't really have a lot of choices, let's just be honest. And you could make the argument that maybe none of those are really true essence Supermoto bikes. So you can say the KLX 300 is too small and too slow. I kind of disagree with that, but you know, it could be considered a kiddie bike that you feel that you're going to grow out of that thing. I get it, but it's cheap at $6,000, or at least cheap in today's standards. You have the DRZ, which is kind of heavy for a Supermoto bike, if you want to say so. And it's old. The technology is old, not so much the weight, it's the technology. And I think now that they're charging $8,000 almost brand new, when you tack on dealer fees on top of that, good Lord, that's expensive for that thing. I mean, I remember brand new when they were like $5,000, but of course the bike is old and so am I. And then you can make the same argument, is a 701, 690 even a Supermoto? Because They're heavy. And if you've ever ridden on a track before, they're mostly on go-kart tracks. Those are small circuits with not a lot of straight room, very, very slow speed tight corners. And if you've ever ridden a 74 horsepower, single cylinder, 325 pound bike on a kart track, you're in for an experience. Let me put it that. So I don't know if everybody just starting out on one, even though they're premium, if that's the best route to go. So consider that where you're going to be riding. If you're going to do tracks, a lot of tracks, it's probably better to buy a dual sport and convert that bike, because you're going to want to do special things to make it fit your riding. And oh, by the way, guys, I know there's a lot of two-strokes out there, like there's a 452 stroke with KTMs and stuff. Those are super bitchin', only for dedicated track use. So if your whole life is going to be track, you are going to race, spend the money on it, but it's not street legal. And what I want to talk about mostly is what fits most people is we want a bike that we can ride on the road, right? Do some wheelies in the parking lot. Unless you live in a small town, your brother's the sheriff or something, go buy your two-stroke. But for us here in America, two-strokes are not legal. I know they were in Europe. You can ride those on the street. It's a different story, but not here. So we're going to try to stick mainly to the 50-state legal road bikes that can be converted. I would say converted, because by doing that, you can build something of good quality. And these newer dual sports like this one, the KTM 500, the 501 Husky, even the 350, make great conversions because these bikes are lighter than like the 701s. They're way, way more, they're actually probably lighter than I don't know what the exact details on the DRZ 400. I think even the KLX 300 might weigh at 300 pounds. This is even less than that. And the KTM's even less than this. And by the time you pull off some of the pipes and the emissions, you can get these weights down really into the mid 200s and maybe even lower. So that really changes the way something like that handles on both the freeway, both the power, and also the power to weight, and of course, small kart tracks. The flickability and handling of it is amazing, or the responsiveness. So that decision comes down to you and what kind of riding that you want. For me, I think converting is better because these newer dual sports are just better motorcycles with great technology in them. They're built off of race bike chassis. So think even the 701, even though it's premium, it is a street-based engine. This is a dirt bike engine. This is the same engine the 450 runs, the CR 450R. It just has some detuning to make it street legal. And you know, it's the same way with the KTM 500 and the rest of them. These are seriously fast bikes that can be unlocked with a few modifications. But you got to do the work and you have to have the money. So the decision comes down to you, the rider. If you're going to do some tracks, you want to have a multi-purposed motorcycle, buy one and convert it. If you already own one, it's probably better to convert it if your bike is a late model bike, because the most you'll ever spend is maybe $2,000 to $3,000, and that's on the high end. And that's still cheaper than a new bike. However, if you've got some money burning a hole in your pocket, and that's not an issue, you should buy two of them. Because I've even thought about this after putting these tires on, that it might be a better idea for me to buy another CR 450RL or L model, which I never thought I'd buy two of the same bike in my life, just so I didn't have to convert it, or maybe even the KLX 300 to build a project. I don't know, you tell me what you think, but it's probably going to stay in this trim for quite some time because I'm too lazy to put the dirt tires now back on the bike. It was a little bit more intensive. Again, decision's up to you. You decide. Nonetheless, the most important thing is the fun factor. And we talk about this in every Supermoto video. What's the beauty of this riding area? What's the beauty of this sport? It's so damn fun. There's nothing else that you can do that has this much frickin' excitement. So it doesn't matter. Just get on one and do it. So that kind of wraps up my video, just giving you my final thoughts here. Really excited about this bike, really excited to finally get it out there and start riding it again. I didn't want to do too much on it before I did the video because I got a feeling I'm going to flip it upside down here at some point, but very, very excited about this. Again, as I said, guys, the most important thing is that you get involved in Supermoto. There really isn't a better, more exciting, exhilarating thing to do. I mean, it's amazing what you can do on this, where you can go, how much fun you can have, and I'm going to document all of this. And on that note, I'd like to take this moment to get your feedback. Now that I'm putting Supermotards as part of my channel, What kind of content do you want to see? Do you want me riding wheelies up and down the street, raising some mayhems? Do you want me to do some track days? Do you want me to race? Do you want me to make more builds? Do you want me to buy other Supermotos? Where can we go? Let's all work together, and where can we go with this thing? But I'm really excited for the way this thing turned out. It looks amazing. Oh, by the way, one thing I forgot, I did have to sand down these fork guards because the tire was rubbing that, but I think most of that is pretty easy. Real simple conversion if you got a little bit of time. Think about what kind of rider you are, what you want to accomplish. But man, we're going to have a hell of a lot of fun on this. So anyway, guys, that concludes my video today. I'm done talking. I just want to go ride. So as I always say at the end of every video, whatever I said today is just my opinion only, and I might be wrong.